Our guest today has 30 plus years of professional experience. For 20 years, she has trained professional, holistic healers, coaches, and past life regressionists. She is helping others to gain life vision and soul purpose. She is an acclaimed clinical hypnotherapist and author of 5 books, which include Past Life Regression, a guide for practitioners, Hypnotherapy, a client-centered approach. I'd like to welcome Dr. Mary Lee LeBay to the show. How you doing, doctor?
Great. How are you doing, Dylan?
Excellent, excellent. We were talking earlier, it's wonderful having you on the show. I'm glad you're able to take some time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Well, thank you. And feel free to call me Mary Lee. I'm a casual kind of person.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess I always kind of begin with, recently anyway, with my guests, how are things in the state of the world and where you're at in the world these days?
You know what? I don't know that much. I watch the news, but I stay home all the time. So I guess it's strange because normally we're out and about, and now it's just a little more comfortable to stay in. But getting a lot of stuff done. But because I pay attention to the astral world a lot more than maybe the normal citizen, it's very busy out there as well. So, just to kind of lead into our conversation, I guess, when we see things that are happening on on the earth plane, in the world, in politics, in natural phenomenon, etc., it's really a reflection of what is happening out there in the spiritual worlds as well. A lot of people have the feeling that when you're out there, everything is, harp playing, and, everybody's out there for your own best interest, looking out for you, right? And it's the same out there as it is here. So I pay attention here to what's happening in the world, but I'm also paying attention out there as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely want to get a little bit into that because that's
Yeah.
something that's slightly different than some of the past life regressionists I've had on the show before. And I think it's fascinating. Your work includes a little more than just traditional hypnotherapy and regression work, as you just mentioned. So I find it interesting that you use a toolbox of different techniques with your clients and even with some of the people that you're training. What are some of those techniques and some of the different things that you do that might be slightly different than the average hypnotherapist?
Well, I do combine a lot of NLP tools, a lot of psychological tools with the hypnotherapy. So there's that. But then the past life regression, which has been a passion of mine for most of my life, many, many decades. But then I've also taken some shamanic tools that are really, you're usually thinking of them like sacred journeys, or what they call shamanic journeys, soul retrieval, that sort of thing. And I've morphed them now. I've evolved them into techniques that can be used in a more clinical setting, rather than, so it makes it more comfortable for the average person, maybe the corporate executive who needs that kind of work, but maybe would not go to a shaman where there's going to be rattles and drums and, smudging and things. And they can do it right here in the office where it just feels a lot more clinical. And then communicating with spirit guides, all things spiritual, really. I do work a little bit with extraterrestrials and with spirit depossession, when people have spirit attachments and spirit possession. It's not a large part of my work, but it's something that I'm very familiar with and
That's
trained.
that's fascinating. Can you elaborate a little bit on the extraterrestrial thing?
In what way?
You
Like,
said you work with them, or
no, not. I have worked with about a dozen people who have um, had either missing time or some kinds of extraordinary experiences. And so then when we're in this session, I'm very neutral. So we're looking for anything. I mean, anything from psychological psychosis, neurosis, to, forgetfulness, amnesia or something. But in some cases, it really does turn out to be an abduction situation. And so I've helped them to understand it, remember the things that they've had amnesia for. It's a very special kind of uh, exploration, and it can become dangerous because there's a reason why they don't want you to remember all of that.
Right.
Some of it, our own psychology, it's just too traumatic to remember.
That's
Um,
interesting.
but a lot of people have had those experiences. And, if we want to dive in the deep end, I've had an experience myself. And yeah, and we don't need to make this interview about that. But I've had it up front and personal, and I am the type of person that likes to have those first person experiences. So, it's one thing to read about it or to observe it in somewhere else, but it's another thing to actually have gone through it. Just like past life regression, a lot of people have opinions about past lives, but have never experienced it. I know a lot of practitioners who will take you through a past life, but have never experienced it. And so without that firsthand experience, there is, a lack of maybe connection with whatever you're working with. So I don't mind having had the experience, but they were not friendly. So um,
That's interesting. Now, do you think that's I mean, what would be the reason that they would want to abduct people? I mean, perhaps you might know, or even is it something that's agreed upon before you come into this lifetime that's going to happen? That's going to be an experience that you go through, or what are your thoughts?
as far as agreeing to it, there are certain cases that I've had where this encounter has been passed down through generations within a family. So, grandfather, mother, child, grandchild, that sort of thing. In other cases, it's, maybe right in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time. In my case, I think I got traded off. There was somebody who was having experiences with ETs. And I think that in order maybe to get in their good graces, it's sort of like a hostage situation, right? Or, being arrested and saying, hey, I'll turn over all my buddies if you leave me alone, right? And so he had started contacting me about his close encounters. And within days, they came after me. And I have enough protections and enough friends out there that they had to back off, but they tried on 3 occasions to convince me to go with them. So, um, but I can trace it right back to this guy that was um, telling me that he wanted my help. It was just we were in a discovery call. We were talking on the phone, talking about whether we would work together professionally. But I realize now he didn't have any intention of working with me professionally. He really just wanted to set up the connection and
Wow,
them come after me. So
that's
it's okay.
interesting. And
Yeah, well, for me, um, it was a great experience. Now I know, right? Now I've had that
Mhm.
experience, but now I also have extra protection around that. So
You had mentioned that a lot of times it's family down through the generations. I've heard that before from others. Do you think it's something like they're studying the genetics of that family line, or what do you think? Why do you think it is that they focus in on a family generation after generation?
I'm sure it's different motives for different extraterrestrials. It's, you know, we can't get confused here in thinking that they're all one race with one goal. That's like saying every terrorist has the same goal, or every dictator or every country has the same goal when they are going out there exploring, right? So some may be beneficial or benevolent, and others are not. And in abduction cases, those are not typically benevolent. So those are not the good guys. It's sort of like, you know, a country isn't going to take hostages if they're the good guys, right? They're going to, you know, find other ways to get their work done. However, in the case of familial, I had one case where that was true. Well, it was true that my client came to me, let's just start there. My client came to me, he was a PhD physicist, very scientific, and he said, I had some extraordinary experiences as a child. I'm trying to figure out what they mean. And so then as we started doing the hypnosis, he went right into the experience and started recalling. And at one point in the session, he even said they're concerned about what we're doing. And I said, about what we're doing? And he said, yes, they know that we're going in and recapturing these memories, right? And so, so they were aware that you know, the spell had been broken. You know, his amnesia. You know, because oftentimes they'll do that. They'll put amnesia on the experiencer. So anyway, so we talked with the ETs, and they agreed that if he wanted to know, that they would allow him to know. And so we went through a lot of different sessions, a lot of different experiences. And even in between times, he was remembering more and more. So all of the memories were flooding back into him. And it was extraordinary for him, because being scientific, he actually came to the second session and said, you know, I don't really believe this. I don't think that really happened. I think I made it up. I think I'm in denial. And I said, well, why would you need to be in denial if you didn't believe it? And he said, oh my God, you're right. I do believe it. I do believe it happened. But it was so outside of his scientific education. The thing that happened with him, though, as far as the family, he had been taken out of his mother's womb. He remembered at one point being extracted from his mother's womb and put like in a petri dish between two slides and examined, maybe manipulated, maybe DNA manipulation, and put back into his mother. And then anyway, so over time, and a lot of memories. I mean, the stories could go on and on. But I asked him after about a year that we hadn't been in contact, I contacted him again and I said, how are you doing? You know, what's happening? And he said, well, I know now that my son has had the same thing going on. They're taking him now as well. And I realize now that they were taking my mother as well. So like all these memories and that expansion of knowledge happened. And I asked him how he was doing with that. Is that okay? And he said, yeah. In his case, what they wanted from him was knowledge of our physical world. So many times when he was being abducted, they would show him these pictures of bears and babies and birds and just like everything about the natural world. And he would download, just because of his knowledge of science, they would be able to download all of his knowledge of these, you know, physical world, biology, scientific data. And that was pretty much why they wanted him. Our curiosity came in, did they program him to become a physicist, or because he was going to be a physicist, were they interested? So we don't know.
That's a fascinating thought.
Yeah, but because of his mother's abductions, because she had been involved as well, he thinks that when they took him out and put him, in the slide, and they were manipulating, that they were kind of manipulating and grooming him to become a scientist so that they could receive the information that they were interested in. But there are a lot of other stories. I mean, every client has come with a completely different story, and the ETs had a different agenda. So many different uh, motivations and agendas for this activity.
That's fascinating, and that's I'm sure it's life changing for people that got to go through that. Well, any kind of regression really can be life changing on a soul level. I know I've mentioned that plenty of times on my show before to my listeners, but it's just it's something about it that it's healing, it's spiritual, it's all of the above.
It's
Uh,
expansive for sure
yes, it
for that
is.
kind of stuff. But with past life regression, it's almost now, the more that I've studied, and I've been studying metaphysics for 40, 50 years. I started with astrology and tarot in 1967. So it's been a few decades of this, and then doing my own past life regressions on me, or having them done on me, since 1986, I think 85, actually 1985, and then doing them on other people. What I've come to really understand is, a lot of people talk about spiritual enlightenment, that they want to grow and they want to become more conscious, right? The number one, in my book, the number one way to do that is to do a lot of past life regression. Because if you don't know yourself, how are you going to know anything else, right? And, if you allow me to kind of elaborate on that, I look at the soul like a multifaceted diamond. So if you have this diamond with an infinite number of facets, right? And it's going to shine and sparkle. Imagine a big diamond with, infinite facets. But when you only know about who you are in this lifetime, you only know one life, you're living from one facet, right? So imagine if your fiance comes, if you're a woman in particular, and your fiance comes and offers you a diamond with one facet. It's not going to sparkle very much. It's not going to be very lustrous, right? So the more you do your regression work, the more you visit past lives, the more you're illuminating other facets on that diamond. And you can make connections between them. And so now, through doing this work, you know much more about yourself, different occupations you've had, different ways of expressing your purpose, really knowing what your purpose is, finding out what your personality quirks are, why you have certain maybe past life traumas that are now creating disease or dysfunction, or phobias, different issues that are happening in life, and being able to correct that. But also what it's doing is it's creating more available mass for you to use. And so imagine if you're only living from one aspect or one facet, any little trauma like COVID-19 comes along, right? We're locked down for a year and all this stuff is happening, and you live from this facet. It's like the worst thing that's ever happened in your life, perhaps, right? Maybe not for everybody, but it
Right.
becomes a trauma. Where for me, I look at it and I go, yeah, well, I remember the bubonic plague. I remember the potato famine. I remember, and you can go on and on and on because you remember these firsthand. You have this experience. And so things are not as traumatic. It's almost like you're creating a deeper rudder for your boat. Instead of being tossed around all the time by every little ripple and wave, you can just stand firm as all of this happens, because it happens in every lifetime. We have all sorts of things going on,
Yeah.
world wars, plagues, um, you know, all sorts of things. And so for me, this, finding out who you are in these other lifetimes brings you wisdom, brings you stability, it helps you to expand your consciousness. It fortifies your memories, and those memories will dissolve over time if we don't go back and attend to them.
Yeah, it's just like kind of like understanding your higher self better, right? And you're kind of not so much going through life with blinders on as, focused on that one life or that one point of view. You're able to see it from multiple points of view and multiple experiences, right?
Right, exactly. It's just that's how we expand our consciousness is first of all knowing more about yourself. I
That-
know
That's the
probably
definition
dozens.
of self-actualization right there. That's
It's huge.
that's my goal, and that just kind of sparked something in me. Maybe I need to get some more past life work done. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I've done, because I've done this for so long and I've been teaching it, when I also learned how to do all the hypnotherapy and all the techniques that I learned within that and have developed, I was able to combine these in a very unique offering where we can go into the past lives, but we can also do the healing and we can look for specific things. We can enhance our talents and we can reduce the trauma and actually make huge corrections, which actually changes the timeline. We've gone in at times and we've changed, um, we've made significant changes. We have to be very, very careful because we don't want to disrupt the whole fabric of time and space, right? But we can go in and make significant changes so that the traumas that have happened in these other lifetimes do not affect us anymore. They can be desensitized and reduced to, having more stability in those lifetimes. Um, for instance, addictions in this lifetime. And look around the world, we've got a horrible situation with addictions, being a real problem in the world. And a lot of it stems from other lifetimes, other traumas, not just this lifetime, but a tendency towards that addictive behavior. And quite honestly, I don't think we can fully address addictions without addressing the other lifetimes where this has shown up. Because,
That's
okay, go ahead.
interesting because from someone who's known a lot of people and myself included that have battled addiction, oftentimes you find people, they end up falling back into the same things over time. But if you're not addressing it like you're talking about, that makes a lot of sense to why that, you can't really solve the problem without getting to the root.
Well, there's two issues that come in with addictions. One is entities, because there could be negative spirits who want you to be addicted because then they can get the effects of that, or they can crush you because that's what they want to do. Or the past lives. So if you imagine the diamond again, and you're on this facet, let's say it's you, Dylan's on this facet, and we're working really hard to remove the addiction out of out of your behaviors, right? But yet your diamond is sprinkled with these other lifetimes that are also fighting addiction or succumbing to it. And so you might be, pushing yourself away from it, but those are dragging you down because that tendency is still there underneath the surface. So we go into each of those lifetimes, we correct it there, we show each of those individuals how to better handle the situation or how to mitigate it somehow and ease that up so that then when we're addressing the addiction in this lifetime, you have nothing pulling you backwards, right? You fix it, right? And then you can stand on your own again in a much healthier, congruent way.
That's well explained. I've never heard a regressionist explain it that way. Very good. Um, so, as I had mentioned before, you actually train other people professionally. One thing I did notice watching one of your YouTube training videos, I noticed that the professional, like you have a type of system and program that you have put in place. Can you talk a little bit about your program and what you have in place?
Uh-huh. I call it integrative hypnotherapy and past life regression certification training. The entire program is online now on teachable.com. And it comes to, you can take the whole training online if you wish, but I also offer with each training or each person who registers 7 3-hour phone calls, group phone calls, where I give support, live demos, answer all their questions, actually provide more training during those calls. And then you have the opportunity of repeating those calls later if I have room in future classes. So, the training happens, you get certified as a hypnotherapist and certified as a past life regression specialist. You get all this support from me. We also have a Facebook page just for graduates and students where there's a lot of ongoing support. So, instead of just getting a certificate and being on your own, you'll actually have support from me for, well, at least the rest of my life, which, I'm getting up there in age now. So, maybe there's another decade or maybe 2 decades left. So we'll see. I'll be 70 in February. So,
Stop.
um,
No, you won't. Stop it.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
well, thank you. It's a good lifestyle. There's a lot of going into trance with our clients. And so it does keep you young and um, relaxed, I guess, in a lot of ways. So, but for as long as I'm around, that training will be there and the support. And it's comprehensive. I used to teach this at Bellevue College, which is a very highly acclaimed, used to be a community college, now it's a regular state college, and at Bastyr University, which is one of a handful of respected universities that turn out naturopaths and acupuncturists and Chinese medicine practitioners. And I was the person that developed the hypnotherapy and past life program. And during that time, which was over a period of about 7 years, maybe 5 years ago, I ended that contract. But during the time that I was teaching there, I worked very closely together with my staff connection there at the university, and we really raised the level of education and to the university standards. And so the course is really beautiful. I'm highly proud of it, and I'm turning out a lot of really highly qualified hypnotherapists and past life regressionists.
Yes, in the video, I was able to go through most of the one video, and it seemed like it was pretty in depth. I even liked how you were, talking and teaching the others on like how not to be leading and letting the subconscious kind of, do its thing and not lead them into, and coming from a psychology background, I could appreciate that. Um, Very good stuff. So do you do sessions? How does it work now? Is it like they use certain times of the year you start a group of people, or how does that work?
Thank you for asking, because the training online, you can register anytime and get started. And when you finish the online training, you'll get certified. Now, I do offer the phone calls, the Zoom calls. Um, there's a class that starts tomorrow. So, that's probably too soon. But January of 2021, they'll be starting about every 3 weeks. I start a new group. And I alternate it I'm on the West Coast of United States, but I make the calls with hours that would accommodate people all the way to Australia so they could join the calls. And then on the alternative calls, they are appropriate for people from the West Coast of America all the way to actually Istanbul, Tel Aviv, all the way to Eastern Europe. So almost anybody around the world, actually anybody around the world could do it. It would be a little bit more awkward hours, maybe if you're in India or something. But I have scheduled the calls so that it could accommodate people around the world. And I have people in the present class in South Africa, in Belgium, in parts of the United States. And so it's getting a nice international group together.
That's great. And you had mentioned that I think I'd seen you'd mentioned that you'd talked about training others to kind of help the planet, or to just to help. And why is that so important to you?
Well, part of my purpose, actually, my purpose is not to be a healer or a teacher. It's just that's what I do in order to further a higher purpose of mine, which is to help people wake up and become more conscious, more self-aware, but more conscious and connected spiritually. And there's only so many people I can see in my office. And there's only so many hours I can sit in this chair, or concentrate. And so by teaching other people, I can help people exponentially, because if I can give really good training to my students so that they can replicate what I do, although that's not really necessary. But anyway, so the answer is, so more people can have the benefit of this good work, right? But I'm not really looking to make cookie cutters out of my own self, right? I bring a certain vibe and energy and knowledge to the table or to the session. But maybe somebody who's a massage therapist or a business coach or a mental health counselor, doing I have naturopaths, acupuncturists, people from all walks of life, policemen, lawyers, coming and taking the training. And then they can apply these techniques and combine it with their own talents to aim at their own purpose, right? And they will attract the people who really resonate with their energy and their offering. So not all the clients are mine, right? Some of them belong to other people who will have their unique approach and energy to offer. But what I do is I teach the structure of dozens of techniques, and we learn the structures, but then we throw away the scripts. So this is not a script-led or forward kind
Right.
of training. So we learn the structure, but then once we have that in mind, then the sessions are very organic, client-centered, non-leading, flowing. And the non-leading is a piece that I really emphasize, because the session is about the client. It's all about their process and their imagination and how their subconscious mind has created the perspective of the universe, or their perspective of the universe. And that's what's maybe not working properly. Maybe there's something there, but that's, by allowing that to come forward, we can see how have they created their perspective, their point of view, and how is it not working? And their subconscious mind will also tell us how to fix it. And so we just keep handing the tools, and then they're able to fix it, and oftentimes in a single session. It's so beautiful, so effective. It's a rapid um, therapy that has lasting results. So it's just fun. And of course, the past lives are the most fun. Going on these journeys.
Yeah.
You've led a few, and just going into seeing where the people go and what they remember. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, it is exciting. What got you started in this type of work? How did this become well, you mentioned that maybe it's not your soul journey, but it seems like, I mean, you've been involved in this pretty much your whole life.
Right. Well, I started very young believing in there being something more to the world than what we see. And I'm not even sure, I'm sure I came in with that because growing up in the Midwest, in a little Presbyterian kind of, town, little tiny town, nobody was talking about reincarnation or spirits or anything other than in the context of church. But I knew there was more, and I was always looking for more. And then, like I said, I started with tarot and astrology. Got into in the 60s and Eastern religions and yoga and all the those kinds of mind expanding uh, opportunities, I guess, that we had in the 60s. And then just kept at it, kept studying. There weren't a lot of resources then. There were a lot of very arcane books. Now, there's whole sections of the library. But then in the 80s, I did open up a metaphysical bookstore and, started sponsoring psychic fairs and really honing my gifts and having people come in and teach classes. And then I started teaching little classes here and there. And then I got my hypnotherapy certification, and it started really opening some doors for me. For me, I always had the goal in mind, which was that consciousness expansion, learning more about the universe. But getting there, I would have never predicted it. I just kept opening the door, or I just kept walking through the doors that were opening for me, right? And so a door would open and I'd go, oh, let me try that one. The door would open, I go, oh, okay. And I'd find, okay, this didn't work or this did work. And I just kept opening doors. And then there was the door of the hypnotherapy training and the NLP, and it was quite extensive. 300 hours. And there's only 100 required for certification, but I went through 300 and got clinical hypnotherapy. And then I started realizing how to put this together with all the spiritual knowledge that I had gathered and the past life regression. And then I started writing books and got certified as a hypnotherapy instructor. I just kept walking through the doors, and it brought me here. So, I was a practitioner for a while, and then I started teaching, and those are all part of my purpose. Being a practitioner and teaching, and in lifetimes I've done healing work, druid work, which involves all the sciences from astrology to strategies in warfare. Just all that consciousness expansion kind of work. And so, teaching and healing is not the ultimate purpose, but it's a way to facilitate yourself as you're moving towards that purpose.
You talk about, using maybe astrology charts or astrology and incorporating that. What are some of the uses, and how do you go about doing that?
So in my private session, well, I use astrology for a lot of things, but in my private sessions, I always look at the client's chart, and I'm happy to give them as much information that they would like about it. Some clients, want to spend a lot of time talking about it, and others are like, it doesn't matter. But for me, it's a roadmap. So if I'm working with you, I'm going to throw your chart up on my screen because it's going to tell me so much about, is this person visual, kinesthetic, auditory? What kind of challenges are they having right now? How are they in relationship? What are you attracted to? How do you think? Emotional nature. I see such a blueprint of that, a map, that instead of you talking to me for an hour about who you are and what's going on, I can look, and then I can usually just tell you a few things quickly. And, and oftentimes what's really fun is looking at the transits, because it's pretty clear a lot of the times why that person came in to see me and why at this particular moment. What is the crisis, or what is the motivation for them to be there on that day. But it's just, to me, not knowing a person's chart is like driving blind. I should have looked up your chart. I didn't even ask you.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think it could be a really neat tool to use if you can read the charts like you can. I think it's
Well,
fascinating that you incorporate that into your work.
yeah, actually, one of the trainings I have on Teachable is a basic astrology course. So a lot of people had asked me to uh, to teach them how to read astrology charts the way that I do for therapists. So I teach a basic course on Teachable that gives you what you need to do what I do. It's not like really in depth with a lot of the fine points of astrology, because that's a science that you could be studying forever. I'm always learning something new about astrology. But to be able to look at a chart really quickly and just get the information you need in order to help a client more thoroughly, or more, succinctly, then I teach that in my course.
Can we talk a little bit about your written work, some of the books that you've published?
Well, of course. What would you like to know?
Just, maybe on, the two that I had mentioned in the beginning, kind of what they're about, what the message is you're trying to get across, that kind of thing.
Okay. So I have 5 published books. I've written a lot more material, but those are the 5 that are formally published. And the one that you were talking about, Hypnotherapy, a Client-Centered Approach, is really written as a textbook for hypnotherapy. I wrote that probably 18 years ago. It's been a long time. My techniques have evolved since then. It's still a really good basic book. It's used in classrooms around the world. There are trainings everywhere that are using that book. Yeah, but I'm waiting, and very shortly I will be out of the contract with that publisher, and then I'm going to publish an updated version of it. I'm going to bring it into more of what I'm doing now, but for people who want that, they can just take my training, because I've done, I teach all the modern stuff now in the training, but it's still a solid book with wonderful techniques involved. And then the other one you mentioned was Exploring Past Lives, Soul's Quest for Consciousness. I have 2 books on past life regression. Exploring Past Lives is written for the general public, and it goes, A to Z on things, all things past life regression. All right. And then I have another book called Past Life Regression, a Guide for Practitioners, that is used again as a textbook all around the world in past life trainings for people to learn how to do the techniques. So the Exploring Past Lives would be more for general public. And then the Past Life book for the Guide for Practitioners is for training. But it really gives a lot of in-depth knowledge. Again, that knowledge is ever evolving. I am learning things all the time that if I ever had time, I would also update those books, which I really need to do pretty soon. But again, the updated information is included in the trainings. That's where it's easier for me to just disseminate that to the people I'm training, is really the more advanced, updated material.
Right, right. Now you can you touch a little bit on, I guess, the importance of meditation?
Yeah, well, it is important to clear your mind, to calm your system, And actually, hypnotherapy is very close to meditation. Basically, we're taking you through verbal commands in this case. Some people do physical things if you're in the room with the people. I never touch my clients. I just don't see the need for it. But so, you know, in hypnotherapy, I would be guiding you into that really deep, yummy, meditative state. For me, the difference is with meditation, it's more open-ended, where it's just, I want to relax, clear my mind, you know, reset my system, maybe have some passive information coming in to chew on. Meditation means to chew, like cows chew the cud, right? To meditate. Um, but with hypnotherapy, you're in the same state of mind, but it's for a specific goal. So you go to that level of brainwave activity, but then you're guiding the client to achieve a goal, either to remember certain things, to understand connections or why things are set up the way they are, and to fix them if there's something there that needs fixing. Yeah. But, you know, here's a thing, Dylan, that is also important. So kind of along the lines of meditation, um, you know, our chakra system is actually, people think of it as just like a totem pole of colored lights, right? But actually the whole system is in a torus shape. It's like we're in the middle of a big donut, and the chakras come up the middle, and then what we consider the aura, but there's 5 more chakras that come around the outside, and it creates this continuous motion. All right. So there's 12 chakras, and they're continuously, the energetic field that you have is continuously in motion like this, going around this whole field, energetic field, energy field that is each of us. And if you do a little exercise, which is really just about 10 seconds or 30 seconds, where you just stop all the busyness, you stop your brain, you stop your motion, and you just imagine, for me, how I imagine it is that I'm in a freeze frame, like everything stops. But you can't stop, obviously, breathing, but you can't stop the energetic cycles, right? But what happens is when you do the freeze frame, when you just go, you know, everything just stops for 30 seconds, it allows the energy to flow in that torus shape, your aura and chakras. It allows it to flow, where when we're stressed, when we're busy, when we're, you know, attending to everything, then as that energy comes around, it gets stuck in certain points because it's coming up against that stress. And there was an interesting study that I wrote about in my PhD thesis, which was that, well, it kind of relates to this. There was a study by Suzanne Segerstrom and Richard Miller. They over a period of 30 years, they studied a group of people, and they noticed what were the stressors that these people were experiencing. And after 30 years, what were the diseases that they had developed? And they showed a distinct and direct line between the nature of the stress and the nature of the disease that they would develop over time, right? And there are books written about this now. If you have this disease, it comes from this kind of dysfunction, right? But if you look at it in regard to the chakras and the aura system, the torus of what we call the Solsha system, if the energy comes around and it's always getting stuck here, because this is my stress and it's always stuck here and stuck here, that's going to kind of wear a hole right there. And that's really not the right language, but you can see where it gets worn out. If you have a tire that's half flat, it's always going to be wearing out in a certain, or, not aligned right. It's going to be wearing out in a certain place, right?
Right.
So it's going to wear out in a certain place. And where that wears out is probably, a direct correlation as to how that's going to affect our physical body. As the Segerstrom-Miller research showed us, the stress relates to the disease, but a different way, in an overlay of that, is it's what is happening to our energetic system due to the stress. So meditation, hypnotherapy, or this 30-second freeze frame exercise is going to go a long way in allowing that energy to really flow and energize, rejuvenate. We have to regenerate, right? Regenerate energy, regenerate cells. And so it allows that to happen in a better way, which is why I don't look 70, right?
I, I love
61.
that. I learned something new today that I'm gonna have to put that to use. That's very,
Yeah,
very good.
yeah, do it a few times a day. It's really amazing. Yeah.
So in your line of work, um, a lot of times people in your field, they tend to experience like synchronicities or things. It's almost as if because you're paying attention to the universe is now paying attention back to you, or maybe it's just that you notice things more often than the average person because you're just more aware. Have you had any experiences like that, like with synchronicities or anything that's almost as if the universe is speaking to you?
Yeah, pretty much constantly. I can get some pretty good feedback loops with the universe. Um, I think that in different cases, it might work different. I don't think it's always the case, because you have to be in the flow as well. So, and you have to pay attention, and all of that in order for it to happen. Um, and what we call synchronicity could be some help from the other side as well. I don't think that the universe is out there just waiting for me to have a good life, or I don't think that everything in the universe is here just to help me have a great life. Um, I think that based on my goals and energy and focus and actions and values and all the things that go along with things, do help me to have a better life than maybe somebody else who might have negative attitudes, do things that are against their own value system, or have values that are destructive. So I think it just depends on who you are. What I do notice is with my spirit guides, um, if I am very clear as to what I want, they will open the doors and help me with that energy. But if I'm unclear and undecided, or self-sabotaging, then they won't, because it's not up to them. A good spirit guide, a proper spirit guide, will not make the decision for me or override
Right, free
my
will.
path and my free will and my decision making process. They may encourage me to learn and to make a better decision next time or something. But if I'm very clear, this is what I want, and I've seen it with my clients. I've had people say, "Oh, I really want to work with you, but I don't have the money." And we talk a little bit about manifesting, and I give them some exercises, but it really has to be, 100%. I mean, what I say is it's like magic, right? So if you have a wizard and he's going to do magic, and he said, I'm going to, point my finger and I'm going to light a fire over there on that pile of wood, right? I'm just going to make that happen. Well, if 50% of it is, yeah, I'm going to make it happen, and the other 50% is, I don't really think that can happen. I'm, all filled with self-doubt, or I really don't want a fire, or what if they have a fire, and then what's going to happen? They're not going to light the fire, because they're pushing, they're putting 50% of the energy, and 50% of the energy is pulling backwards, which is going to nullify the whole thing, right? And the spirit guides aren't going to help because they're going to go, we don't know what they want, right? But if you can say, I want this 100%, and I will do what it takes. I'm going to run to that goal with my hair on fire, like running to a river, like running to a river with my hair on fire. I'm going to go no matter what. If I'm embarrassed, if I might fail, if people are naysayers, if they tell me I'm crazy, I don't care. I'm going for that goal. The doors will open,
Yeah, typically
because
if
it's,
it's beneficial for you, right? For your
yeah.
growth and as a positive in your life.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, yeah, if it's totally, I'm going to go for that and it's totally destructive, I would hope my spirit guides would just like lock the doors, put a bar over it, right? Help me out, guys. Yeah, keep me from my own destruction. Um, but I've talked to my guides about this before, and it's like, well, why didn't you help me do this? And they said, we didn't know what you wanted. You weren't clear. You really have to get clear. So I've been learning to be a lot clearer, and I help my clients. And some of the people that I've worked with where we talked about manifesting, and it's just in a little phone call. It's just like, okay, you're going to manifest it. They'll call me back the next day and say, it's amazing, but I just got a tax refund in the mail, or I just found out that, I got this inheritance, or I got a refund from here or there or something. And it was just like crazy. But they put the energy into it and it happened.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that's there's been books written about it. I've actually had a guest on the show that's how to manifest money. He talks about, and it's kind of like that, the power of the mind and just, your belief in the universe and God. And, you know, it's it's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess just real quick, you've probably had tons of them, but I just wanted to touch on this. Like, what type of confirmations have you come across with any of your clients? Like, for example, maybe somebody had a past life, they mentioned something, they got regressed, they mentioned something, maybe they didn't have no idea what it was, then they later went back and researched it and found out that there was a connection there.
I've had a few. So the ones that come to mind, I had a man, he was a truck driver in this life. All right. He was a truck driver. And I was living in the Midwest at the time, and he would drive down, I think from Ohio to Florida or whatever. Anyway, he did a regression with me, and he got a date. He got a name. He got like all this information, and he was able to drive right up to the cemetery, to the gravestone of that person. Yeah, it was very cool.
Wow.
um, I had another lady who was a step in, so that's a whole other subject. We'll have to have a different interview for that. A step in, so she wasn't born into her body, she stepped in while the body, once the body, like as a more mature woman, right? And this happens, it's a whole other conversation. Mark that down for another
Whoa,
conversation.
that's new to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, you don't have to be born in or die, yeah, let's have another conversation about that. But anyway, so she had stepped in midlife into this body, and she came to me for a regression. And she remembered living about an hour away in another city, and she knew her name, she knew her family, she identified the members of her family, even got the address of the home where she lived. And she went to the city and investigated it and found it, and she found all those people.
That's impressive.
Yes,
That's
that was
impressive.
impressive. She was good. Not everybody's that good.
Right.
Other people, Well, one of the ways that I've done a lot of my confirming is that, you know, we're in soul groups, of course, and I've been very lucky. I think that you find your soul group by being very congruent with who you are, being very authentic. So, because I'm not hiding all my spirituality, you know, I'm just like out there. Here's what I'm all about. Here's who I am. I don't care if you like it or not. Um, I've been able to attract a lot of the people who recognize me, even on a subconscious level. They'll gravitate because at some level they're recognizing that I know this person because I'm exuding that energy of who I am. So over the years, you know, I've gravitated or I've magnetized all, and maybe I'll do a regression to a medieval lifetime. Well, for instance, we did a trip, several of us, about a dozen of us went to Ireland for about 10 days, and we went to various locations. And so I was in Ireland, and I was at the Malahide Castle just north of Dublin. And I was sitting there looking at the castle, and just this whole overlay of a lifetime came, and I could see myself in one of the rooms in the castle, and I was laying there having a baby. So, and two of my sisters were at my feet, you know. So one sister who was a healer, and another sister who lived in the castle. So she was like the wife of the castle owner. And so I was having this baby, and as I was having the baby, I died right in childbirth. And so I lifted up, and my perspective, like you see in the movies, where all of a sudden you're way up at the ceiling looking down, and I could look down at all the white sheets and the blood everywhere, and my two sisters, and you know, I just had this complete experience. And then as I thought about it, I could build out the story more. So I knew that I had been there for several months, and it was really typical that a woman that was pregnant would go, you know, and hang out with her sisters and get cared for, because men are out fighting wars and doing whatever they do, right? So it's like, here, you're safe, stay here at this castle and be attended to. So I could remember a lot about, you know, the months leading up to it. But two of the two sisters were also on the trip. And so I went and talked to them, and I said, do you remember this? And then they filled in part of the story. And they were like, yes, I remember this. And this is what happened. And the baby was a boy, and you know, and on and on. And they could fill in
Wow.
parts of stories from their memories. And this has happened for years and years, where we've done that in groups where, you know, we all look at maybe the same lifetime, and we remember who we were and how we related to each other. Oh, I remember you were my father, or I was your mother, or we were sisters in that lifetime. And so there's a lot of collaboration that happens. So it's really wonderful if you can find people in your soul group where you're incarnating over and over and over again, to remember and to collaborate your stories.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I've had some experiences similar to what you're talking about, and it gives you hope, I think, and it makes you, at least for me, it gives me comfort knowing that, you know, maybe some of the people that I've been close to in this lifetime that are no longer here with me, you know, I'll get to experience another lifetime with them. So
You
it's
will, for
it's good
sure.
stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
Well, it's been a
yeah.
fascinating discussion. Where can we find the wonderful work that you're doing, and how can we get trained up in some hypnotherapy?
Well, the easiest is to go to my website, maryleelabay.com, MaryLeelabay.com. And you can also text me at 425-562-7277. I don't usually answer a phone call because there's just too many robocalls and other distractions. But if you text me, we can set up a phone call, and we can have a discovery call. But you can also, on my website, you can go to trainings, I guess. I don't know. I've been so busy setting up the trainings. I haven't been to my website in a little while, but If you go to the website and look at trainings, it'll direct you to the teachable courses. And you really, if you're interested at all in this training, you need to take a look at everything you'll learn, because it's just very well rounded. So
Very, very nice. Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I look forward to talking about some of those other subjects with you.
Absolutely. Me too. Can't wait.
Oh,